She called the cops and screamed, "He's trespassing on HOA property." I just stood there, holding my coffee, watching 20 construction workers hammer walls into my land. The same land I bought with my military pension 15 years ago. You could see the confusion in the officer's eyes when he asked, "Sir, do you live here?" Karen, blonde hair, clipboard, fake smile, cut in before I could speak. "He used to. But this area belongs to the Willow Creek HOA now. He refused to sell, so we're building around him." I didn't argue. I just looked past her at the half-finished row of luxury homes standing on soil I once camped on with my brothers. Every nail they drove felt like a violation. But I stayed silent, because I had a plan. They thought I was just a quiet old veteran living alone. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that my name was still on the master deed. Their entire subdivision was sitting on my property line. 2 months earlier, a man in a suit had shown up at my gate. "Mr. Hale, the HOA is expanding. We'll offer you market price for your portion." I laughed. "This land isn't for sale." He smiled thinly. "You'll change your mind?" Now, standing there as bulldozers roared, I realized what he meant. They didn't wait for my answer. They built anyway. Karen strutted up, waving papers. "You're obstructing development. You need to leave the premises." I stared at her and said quietly, "Ma'am, this is my premises." She scoffed. "That's not what our records say. Funny thing about records, they can be rewritten. Deeds can't." I walked back into my small cabin, now surrounded by brand-new driveways, and looked at the framed document on my wall. The original property deed, sealed and notarized. My land, my name, every inch of it. For weeks I watched them finish construction. 96 new homes, white fences, HOA signs, security gates. They even installed a community pool where my old barn used to stand. Every day I greeted the workers with a smile. Every night I took pictures, videos, and drone footage. Karen stopped by often, acting like she owned the place. "We'll have to remove that old cabin soon," she'd say sweetly. "It's an eyesore," I'd nod. "You do what you gotta do." Because I was doing mine too. The day they cut my fence to install their main road, I called my lawyer. He laughed so hard he nearly dropped the phone. "You mean the HOA built all that without title clearance?" I sent him everything, blueprints, footage, and the deed. "Let them finish first," I said. "We'll make it public when it hurts most." Weeks turned into months. Families started moving in. HOA fees started rolling out. Karen even started sending me letters demanding I pay her for shared infrastructure. The nerve. One afternoon, she stood in my yard again, surrounded by new homeowners. "We've decided your cabin has to go," she announced. "If you don't vacate within 7 days, we'll file a removal order." Everyone was watching. She wanted to humiliate me. I smiled. "File whatever you want. Just make sure to spell my name right." That night, I sat on my porch watching the sunset reflect off the new rooftops. My land looked beautiful, even with all their arrogance on top of it. And soon every one of them would realize the truth. Because the next letter she'd receive wouldn't come from me. It would come from the court. And the headline would read something like this: "HOA built 96 homes on private veteran-owned land without permission." 3 weeks later, Karen got a letter that made her world freeze. She showed up at my cabin in a panic, waving the papers like they were on fire. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" I looked up from fixing my porch light. "No joke. That's a summons. The county court wants to talk about property ownership." Her face drained of color. "You can't sue an HOA," I smiled. "Maybe, but you can sue trespassers who built on private land." She stormed off, calling someone on her phone. I caught words like lawyer, urgent, and "this can't be happening." Oh, but it was. The next morning, a convoy of HOA members gathered outside my gate. Clipboards, sunglasses, matching shirts. Their leader, a man named Frank, stepped forward. "Mr. Hale, we can settle this. We'll pay you for the part we used. Double market rate." I shook my head. "You already built 96 houses. You didn't use my land. You stole it." Frank tried to stay calm. "Let's be reasonable. There's a community depending on us." I stared at him. "There's a veteran depending on the truth." That line hit him harder than I expected. A few days later, the first hearing began. Karen arrived in a bright red suit, all confidence and perfume, surrounded by her board. She didn't even look at me. She whispered to her lawyer, who smirked like this was going to be easy. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The court clerk read the case title aloud, Hale v. Willow Creek, HOA. Karen leaned toward her lawyer. "It's fine. We have zoning documents," I heard that whisper. I let her keep thinking it was fine. When my lawyer stood, he dropped a binder on the table with a heavy thud. "Your Honor, this deed predates every construction permit the HOA submitted. It's legally recorded and verified by the county registrar." He handed the judge a copy of the original document. My signature, the official seal, everything. Karen's lawyer stood to object. "That can't be real. Our records—" The judge interrupted. "Mr. Hale's deed was filed in 2008. Your HOA was formed in 2019. On what grounds did you authorize construction?" Silence. You could almost hear the sound of Karen's fake confidence cracking. Then she blurted, "We had verbal agreements. The previous owner gave consent." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Hale, were you the previous owner?" I nodded once. Karen's face twisted. "You never said anything." I looked straight at her. "You never asked permission," the courtroom murmured. The judge raised a hand for quiet. "We'll review the evidence and reconvene next week. Until then, construction and sales on the disputed land are hereby frozen." The HOA gasped. That meant every mortgage, every deal, every homeowner move-in paused. Millions of dollars locked in limbo. As we walked out, Karen caught up with me. "You think you've won? You'll ruin families." I stopped and looked at her, not angry, just tired. "I didn't ruin anything. You did when you built on land that wasn't yours." That night, news crews showed up outside the gates. Drones hovered overhead. Someone leaked the court documents. My phone buzzed nonstop, neighbors thanking me, strangers calling me a hero, a few calling me greedy. I didn't care. Inside, though, something gnawed at me. Not guilt. Justice takes time. It was the feeling of war again. Except this time, the battlefield was paperwork, and the weapons were words. Days passed. The HOA scrambled. Their emails got leaked, showing how they forged permits and ignored legal warnings. It wasn't just arrogance, it was fraud. One evening, my lawyer called. "You'll want to see this," he said. He sent a file. Inside were satellite maps overlaying property lines. The entire subdivision sat dead center on my coordinates. Not half, not partly. All of it. Karen's empire was built on my soil, every fence post and driveway included. Next morning, as I left my cabin, a few of the new homeowners stopped me. One woman looked near tears. "We didn't know. We just bought here." I nodded. "You're not the enemy. You were lied to," she whispered. "What will happen to us?" I said quietly. "That depends on what happens next week in court." As I walked away, the cameras kept flashing. Reporters shouted questions. But I said nothing, because the next round wasn't about talking. It was about exposing everything. The fake deeds, the forged signatures, the bribes. And when that happened, Karen wouldn't just lose the homes. She'd lose her freedom. The courthouse steps were crowded with cameras when I arrived for the second hearing. Reporters shouted questions, microphones pushed forward, flashes burst in my face. I didn't answer a single one. I'd learned long ago, silence speaks louder than words. Inside, Karen sat stiff and pale beside her lawyer. Her usual confidence was gone. Her phone kept buzzing. She turned it face down every time. The judge walked in, and the air went heavy. "New evidence has been submitted," my lawyer said, handing over a thick envelope. Satellite maps, drone footage, county survey reports, and internal HOA emails. Karen's lawyer frowned. "Emails?" My lawyer smiled slightly. "Yes, emails between Mrs. Karen Wright and several county officers discussing how to adjust zoning maps quietly." Karen's mouth dropped open. That's not real." The judge adjusted his glasses. "These were obtained legally under discovery. The timestamps and IPs are verified. You could hear a pin drop." The judge continued, reading aloud. Quote, "We'll just shift the property lines by 2 acres. Hale won't even notice. The county needs these homes finished. End quote. Then he looked up. Mrs. Wright, did you send this? Karen froze. Then she smiled weakly. I was misinformed. Someone used my email. My lawyer turned on the screen and showed a clip from my security camera, the day she stood in my yard bragging about removing my cabin. Her voice clear as day. This whole area belongs to the HOA now. That broker, her lawyer whispered frantically, but the judge had already seen enough. He slammed his gavel once. The court will now proceed with fraud and zoning violation charges under state property law. Karen's head fell into her hands. Her whole empire was cracking in public, but it wasn't just her. The county officials she bribed, one had already confessed in exchange for immunity. It turned out they had rushed approvals, forged signatures, and used fake survey maps, all to push construction faster and claim bonuses. Outside the courthouse, the news broke live. Breaking: HOA board accused of forging land permits and building 96 illegal homes on veteran-owned property. People went wild online. Veterans groups started trending hashtags. Even a local congressman tweeted, "This veteran deserves justice." Karen tried to save face. She called a press conference that evening. Her voice trembled, but she still tried to sound calm. This is a misunderstanding. We believe the land was under HOA jurisdiction. Reporters cut her off. Then why did your lawyer withdraw? Another shouted, "Why did the county revoke your zoning license today?" She walked off mid-interview, eyes glassy, cameras chasing her to her car. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. My lawyer told me, "We've got them cornered, but there's one more thing." He pulled out another file, a forensic audit. Turns out the HOA used fake investors' names to secure loans against your land. They owe millions. You could take it all. I stared at the papers for a long moment. I don't want their money. I just want my land back, he nodded. Then let's make it clean. We'll ask the judge for full property restoration and damages to rebuild your cabin. The next hearing drew even bigger crowds. Veterans in uniform stood outside holding flags. Some saluted me when I walked in. It felt strange. I hadn't worn that uniform in years, but somehow the respect felt heavier now. When the judge entered, he didn't waste time. After reviewing all evidence, he began, "It is clear that the HOA knowingly constructed homes on private land belonging to Mr. Daniel Hale. The court orders an immediate injunction halting all transactions." Karen jumped up. "You can't do this! People live there!" The judge's voice was calm but firm. "You should have considered that before breaking the law." Her lawyer tried to appeal, but the judge raised his gavel again. "Additionally, Mrs. Wright, you are hereby referred to the district attorney's office for investigation into fraud and document forgery." Karen's knees buckled. Two officers guided her to a seat. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, hands folded, remembering every insult, every smug look, every moment they treated me like a squatter on my own land. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Outside, the crowd cheered. Reporters shouted, "Mr. Hale, how does it feel?" I looked at the camera and said quietly, "Feels like freedom." That clip went viral overnight. Millions watched. Comments poured in. "This man's a legend. Don't mess with veterans." HOA got owned by their own arrogance. But for me, it wasn't about fame. It was about peace. Still, something wasn't finished. The homes were still standing, the homeowners confused, and the county scrambling to fix the mess. My lawyer warned me, "It's not over yet. There's a way this could go wrong." I frowned. "How?" He hesitated. "The HOA transferred part of the development to a shell company last month. If they claim bankruptcy, they could trap your land in legal limbo." I sighed. "Then we dig deeper." He smiled. "Already started. You'll like what we found." That was the moment I realized this fight wasn't just about land anymore. It was about exposing everyone who thought they could rewrite truth. And when the next hearing came, it wouldn't just be Karen on trial. The courtroom victory was only the beginning. I thought the nightmare was over, that justice had spoken and my land was safe. But corruption doesn't die quietly. It hides, waits, and comes back when you least expect it. 2 weeks later, My lawyer called again. "Daniel, you better sit down." I was already standing on my porch, coffee in hand, looking over the empty driveways where construction had stopped. "Just tell me," he sighed. The HOA's assets were moved to a company called Willow Development LLC. It's registered in Nevada under a proxy name. "They're claiming you sold them partial rights before 2019? I froze. "That's impossible. I never sold a thing." "I know," he said. "But the document they filed looks official. Forged signature, fake notary stamp. They're trying to rewrite history." My hands tightened around the mug. "Then we show the truth, again." That night I pulled out my old military chest. Inside were notebooks, photos, and one small flash drive I hadn't touched in years. It held every recording I'd taken since the first day they broke my fence. Drone videos, timestamps, even the day Karen herself said, "We don't need his permission." I wasn't a lawyer, but I'd been a reconnaissance officer. I knew how to build a case like a mission. Patient, quiet, thorough. Over the next week, I tracked paper trails, property transfers, and company filings. Every path led back to one man, a county developer named Brad Coleman, the same one who'd offered me money for my land before construction began. Turns out, Brad was the silent partner behind Willow Development LLC. He and Karen were funneling money from the HOA into fake investment accounts. They weren't just stealing land, they were laundering millions through it. I sent everything to my lawyer. "Think this will hold?" He whistled. "Oh, it'll do more than hold. It'll bury them." A few days later, I walked into court again. This time, Karen wasn't there. She was already out on bail. But Brad was. Expensive suit, arrogant smile, and eyes that screamed untouchable. When the judge asked for evidence, my lawyer clicked a remote. The screen lit up with drone footage of construction trucks entering my property, all bearing the logo Willow Development LLC. Then came the emails, transfers, hidden accounts. "Every lie exposed," Brad's lawyer jumped up. "This evidence is circumstantial." My lawyer didn't even flinch. "Then maybe he can explain this," he said, handing the judge a signed agreement, one of Brad's own, linking him to the forged deed. The courtroom buzzed. Brad's smug look vanished. He muttered something about clerical errors, but it was over. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Coleman, you are under investigation for fraud, land theft, and forgery. Officers, take him into custody." As the handcuffs clicked, Brad turned toward me. "You think you've won? You'll never get those homes back. The bank owns them now." I stood up, calm as ever. "You mean my bank?" "I just bought the loan rights last night." He froze. "See, while they were busy hiding money, I had quietly purchased the debt tied to the subdivision, pennies on the dollar, through a veterans housing grant. The same land they stole from me was now legally financed under my name." The courtroom erupted. Karen's lawyer shouted, "That's impossible!" The judge smiled faintly. "Actually, it's legal. That was the twist they never saw coming." I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I just said, "You built on my land, then borrowed against it. I simply took back what's mine, and the rest was just math." Outside, reporters flooded me again. "Mr. Hale, is it true you now own the HOA's property debt?" I nodded. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about balance. That line went viral within hours. People called it the calmest revenge in history. Veterans across the country started sharing my story. Some called me the land ghost, the man who let them build their dream, then took it back with one document. But I wasn't proud. Not yet. There were still families living in those homes, innocent people caught in the middle. That night, I walked through the quiet streets of Willow Creek. The new houses stood in neat rows, porch lights glowing, children's bikes on driveways, laughter behind windows. I couldn't take that away from them. So the next morning I called a meeting. Dozens of homeowners gathered near the pool. They looked scared, confused, angry. One man shouted, "You can't just evict us!" I raised my hands. "No one's getting evicted." They went silent. I continued, "You were lied to, just like I was deceived. The people who sold you these homes broke the law. But I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to fix it." A woman in tears asked, "Fix it how?" I smiled softly. "By making this a real community. not one run by greed. I offered them new contracts, direct ownership, no HOA fees, no fake restrictions. Just honest homes on honest land. They couldn't believe it. A few hugged me. Some cried. And for the first time in months, the place actually felt peaceful. But deep down, I knew something still lingered. Karen was still out there, angry, desperate, and dangerous. And when people like her lose everything, they don't walk away quietly. I thought it was finally over. The land was back in my name, the homeowners were safe, and Willow Creek had turned into something real. Not a fraud-built empire, but a small, honest neighborhood. For the first time in months, I slept without thinking about courtrooms, deeds, or signatures. But peace doesn't last long when people like Karen lose control. It started with a call from the sheriff at 3 a.m. "Mr. Hale, you might want to come down here." My heart sank. "What happened?" He hesitated. "There's been an incident near your property line. Fire." When I reached the edge of Willow Creek, flames licked at the sky. One of the newly built homes was burning. Not mine, but close. I saw Karen standing behind the police tape, wild-eyed, shaking. "She did this," someone shouted. "We saw her near the house before it started." Karen screamed back, "You can't prove anything!" The sheriff approached her calmly. "Ma'am, we have footage. You were seen pouring gasoline behind the fence." Her face twisted with disbelief. "He ruined my life. He took everything." I stepped forward. "I didn't take your life, Karen. You destroyed it the moment you started stealing from others." She glared at me, tears streaming down her face. "You don't deserve that land!" I looked her dead in the eye. "I fought for land like this so people could live free, not so people like you could own others." That broke something inside her. She screamed, kicked over a barricade, and had to be restrained by officers. The crowd of residents watched in silence. For the first time, she wasn't feared. She was pitied. The next week, the news spread everywhere. HOA leader arrested for arson attempt and fraud. She was facing years behind bars. I could have celebrated. But instead, I stood by the ashes of the burnt home and thought about everything that happened. Greed, lies, power, all of it turned to smoke. The families who'd once been terrified started helping each other rebuild. Veterans groups sent donations. Local builders volunteered for repairs. Someone even hung a banner near the entrance. "Welcome to Hale Creek, built on truth." I didn't ask for that name, but seeing it made something tighten in my chest. Maybe that was what peace looked like. Not perfect, but earned. A few weeks later, I sat on my porch as a moving truck pulled up. The last of the old HOA signs was being taken down. The driver waved. "You the guy who owned this land?" I smiled. "Still do." He grinned. "Heard you're letting folks live here without all that HOA nonsense." "That's rare." I shrugged. "Freedom shouldn't come with fees." He laughed, drove off, and I watched the sunset settle over the roofs. For once, the sound of hammers and drills didn't bother me. It wasn't invasion anymore. It was creation. Then out of nowhere, a car pulled up near my gate. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He wasn't a cop or a reporter. "Mr. Hale," he said politely. "Who's asking?" "I represent the County Redevelopment Board. They'd like to buy your land again, legally this time." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He smiled nervously. "They think you'd be great to lead the community's reconstruction." I chuckled. "You mean after they let the last bunch burn it down?" He didn't know what to say. I leaned on the fence. "Tell them no, but if they want advice, tell them to start with integrity." He nodded, a bit embarrassed, and left. As the taillights disappeared, I looked around the land, the fences, the homes, the people waving from their porches. For the first time, it didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home again. Later that night, a kid from down the street came over holding a drawing. It was a sketch of me standing beside an American flag with the words, "Our Protector." I smiled and asked, "You drew this?" He nodded proudly. "Mom said you saved our homes." I looked at the paper for a long time before replying softly, "No, son. I just reminded people who really owned them." He grinned, ran off, and I sat there, listening to the crickets and the soft wind moving through the trees. The land was quiet again, not because it was empty, but because it was finally at peace. Before heading inside, I took one last look at the sky and whispered, "I didn't fight for this country to own land. I fought so no one could ever take it from me again." And with that, I closed the door. The war was finally over.